Wherever your body is in space, I invite you to let it shift and explore subtly for optimal comfort right now. We are shifting modes. We have been sensitized and touched by the work we've done so far. And we are opening up to the experience of dwelling in our body more fully for this starting exercise. If you like, you can close your eyes and let us not be afraid of a little pause here. Let us not scurry into the next thing that we're doing. As we're softening the brain in our skull, relaxing it, we are sending it the message. You don't have to dictate, direct, or control the experience that we're moving into next. Permission, maybe even a little nervousness. But this is also not a lightweight activity to shift this mode. As we're breathing, and as you're continuing to be aware of your comfort and that it's non-rigid, that the body can be natural in its resting here. Because we're going to acknowledge how brave it really is to step away or even a little bit away from the control and the judgments provided to us by our thoughts. Continue to breathe, because I'm going to demonstrate a little what that shift can sometimes feel like. Just be in the moment, just allow the mind to relax, allow yourself to let go of our attachment to or even obsession over the reality created in our thoughts, in our thinking. Some part of, or the voice within the mind, or we'll call it the ego, but we'll say, then everything's going to fall apart. Then something will happen that we're not in control of. Keep breathing. This energy is sometimes what the energy of the mind can feel like, and you'll hear it in my voice. Don't let go, don't let go. Stay in your thoughts, be in control, know what's happening next. Know what's gonna happen, know what's gonna happen, what's gonna happen. Anticipate, guide and control what's gonna happen. Okay, maybe a slightly bigger breath now. Okay. So we can acknowledge that it is a brave, heart-required, significant step to walk away, even for a moment, from the judgments and limitations perpetually occurring in your mind, in your thinking. We've acknowledged that we're in the room. I'll say in the room. I also mean in the body. That we're having a conversation that far exceeds what the mind can completely comprehend. We are talking about, when we talk to the body, every held moment, every moment of our lived experience in this body, the energy of that, the experiences that are unresolved. So when we talk to the body, we are talking to the embryo, we're talking to the 4-year-old, we're talking to the teenager, we're talking to us right now. We are also talking to the elder. that person that we are becoming, the energy of our ancient self. And when we start to get into embodiment work, we realize right away we are not limited in the way that we think that we are. We have access to left behind, neglected or harmed ages and energies of self that can be returned to, can be held, can be integrated. And we also have access, when we are in the world of embodiment, we also have access to the eldest energy of self. So this is what it looks like when we start to have a conversation with the body, and we don't just tell the body what to do or what it should be doing or say that it's doing something wrong. We turn towards the body and we say, oh my God. Oh, let me hear the layers of you. Let me learn from the wisdom of you that survived up until this moment, intact, in a breathwork training. With some part of you saying, I want to advocate for thriving, to tip the balance on the planet so that we are unafraid more often of being alive. We are in awe and humble in our mind when we turn to face the body in communion, ready to listen, ready to receive, ready to apologize. Oh, God. Ready to welcome home. Oh. The intimacy is here. I've wanted and I've looked and I've sought in all these ways, but oh my, you are the only one that will do. And I know that now. It's you are the only one that will do. Oh, welcome home. Your history and your story will be told by me in my presence, in my communion with you as I move forward. Let's, you and I, again, this is a conversation with you and your body. Let's, you and I, mind, body, and spirit, when we join together, let's radiate aliveness so that those around us feel permission that's far beyond what they can comprehend. The invitation is to play, is to grow, is to wonder, is to share, is to bolster the extraordinary aspects of being alive so that the hard, the tragedy, the suffering, and the isolation aspects of being alive can begin to integrate and our life can feel worth it. When we leave the body behind, we will have the result of feeling alone because we're lacking the whole counsel of the whole self. The counsel of the self is more than our thinking, and yet we sometimes spend an overwhelming amount of time in our thoughts. And then we impose those judgments and limitations on others and on our own body and on how we view life. So here, as we continue to breathe, this is intimate to you, this is personal to you. Body, higher, lower, and all aspects of self got me in this room today for reasons that are more expansive and dynamic than even I understand. Thank you, body, for getting here. Will you be my companion as we begin to advocate for aliveness on a planet that needs aliveness and connection more than ever? Will you be my companion? And in my agreement to you, I will turn towards you rather than away from you as we do this together. I will tune to your needs, to your wisdom. I will allow myself to not know, but to learn from you in the moment of each deep breath that I take, that I need, that I share. This significant reconditioning of our own internal situation is that we do not turn away from the deeper self that lives in the body when something's going on, but that we turn towards it. And this radical shift in our relationship to ourselves this revolutionary heart-based energy will realign us with resources, guidance, wisdom, and unconditional love that we have been missing in our lives at times. And then we will begin to share that wealth in a landscape that often relates to life from a place of lack. We live in a world where there is a great deal of lack: money, time, energy, focus. Connection. So when we begin to be fully resourced and living in this energy of thriving, the message of our higher quality of aliveness will begin to spread all by itself. The contagion of it is so exciting, and one of the some version of a thought process that's quite mainstream, I think, is that, well, what can I do? What I'm just this person, and if we look at the planet and the population and we try to find our role in the massive complex of this world, then we might feel like there's an insignificance to our role or what we could achieve. But just as we talked about going into the dynamic nature of breath, where our past and our future, we have deep, incredible access to this multidimensionalness. This is true also for how significant an effect we can have on the world around us by being alive in our body, period. The significance of our role in this ecosystem of life. It matters how we do this. It matters that we come home to the body. Allow your hands now to come to a place on the body, wherever it is that they go. Follow your hands where they're going. Continue to soften your breath into your body. It matters so much that I am here and that I am willing to hold the torch for aliveness. That I am willing to bravely enter the mystery, wisdom and context of my own body. It matters that I express, that I relate, and that I live. My truth is needed on the planet. Take a nice deep breath in. Oh, thank your body. Thank your body. Beautiful. So we're going to kind of stay in a sense of that even as we go into the topics at hand. I want to address the title of this module, Dynamic Movement. Now, don't be fooled or nervous that it's going to turn into a wildly ecstatic, expressive dance party right away. This is included in the topic of movement. It is. This kind of movement is included in the topic of movement. Dynamic movement is that there is also an observance of relative silence because the energy of life moves. And when we are rigid in the body, we're not aware of the movement or the energy, the potency of life moving, right? So we relax the body, and when we relax the body, especially after moving around a little bit, we can feel, in a meditation I call this sensing aliveness. We can feel the energy of aliveness in our body, and we can honor the movement, the quality, the sensation of energy moving in our body when we come to a place of rest. Oh, the energy of life can begin to well up or swell. And then we can be moved by the energy of life without having to do anything, being. Now, what's going on in our mainstream or overculture a lot of the time is this prioritization of doing, and this not just forgetting about being, but actually making being kind of wrong. The wisdom and mystery teachings of the body and of the earth have been chased away historically and made very, very wrong, in fact, hunted. So bringing back into balance the wisdom of the divine feminine and the culture of body aliveness and earth relationship is significant at this time. That's an understatement, but I'm putting it on the table. So we are inviting the qualities of mystery, presence, intuition, honoring, the state of not knowing. If I don't think I need to know the answer, then I won't cobble an answer and then stick to that and miss the whole rest of the show. So we're getting a little bit more comfortable with the energy or mode of discovery and curiosity rather than judgment and control. This is an enormous shift in harnessing the quality of our life so that we really feel alive. And there's, surprising things that can happen. And something happens that I can respond to rather than pushing it away because I can't see it because I don't have an answer for that. And then we end up leaving out the things in life that we might not understand, which is a whole slew of wonderful things. Okay. So there are things on our agenda that we are going to get to in, we'll call it a garden kind of way. This is growing over here, this is growing over here. We will get to it all, but we're going to do it a little piece here and a little piece there, like that. Let's begin with the humble mind. From a healthy brain perspective, when the brain is relaxed and we have a state of mindfulness or openness in our mind, we have more neuroplasticity. So our neural pathways can change more effectively, more quickly, and we can change and shift and recondition some of the programming in the brain that is not helpful. We have an inherited psyche. an inherited brain. Some of the programming is deeply problematic, and we have great agency to shift some of that. So the relaxation in the mind, this is just one part of what I call the humble mind experience. The humble mind experience is also a deep honoring of the skill of not knowing. Not knowing gives us access to the doorway of discovery, the energy of discovery. So making not knowing something not a negative judgment or a problem, but making not knowing something really the best seat in the house. This is the best seat in the house. For example, you're reading a novel and you're really into it, and somebody comes into the room and they've already read this novel, and they're like, oh, the part, and you're like, no. The New Orleans team is like, oh, she's using that one again. Don't tell me the end, because I want to experience it. I want to read the book. Don't spoil it. So if we can shift and be a little bit more like that with what's unfolding in our own lives, then we can enjoy the story that we're reading. We can enjoy the story that we're living. To weave a thread back into the segment that we've just had around touch, we can acknowledge that there are many people who have not, or not on a regular basis, or maybe not ever, or maybe this is us or some part of us, that has not experienced real intimate touch that is not aggressive or sexual. And this puts us feelers and conduits of breath and life in a valuable position to be able to experience our own embodiment and touch, and to provide an experience of presence and touch that is innocent and that is profound. So shifting away from, well, there are an overt fear of, well, there are people who have been harmed by touch. Now I have to be afraid of touch. Now as a practitioner, I have to be afraid of touch because people have been so harmed by touch, and touch has been so corrupted. So let's shift that piece just a little bit to help us in our practitionership with great care and great presence, which I'm going to go ahead and call the same thing. We can explore touch that is neither of those things. So it's an opportunity for us to be even more curious about touch rather than so afraid of touch. The other thread from our previous segment is, I think, Jayne, you were calling it unembodiment. So disembodiment, let's spend just a moment looking at what that is. We live in a disembodied culture, which I like to define as overwhelmed in the head and underwhelmed absolutely everywhere else. And this is very common, and it's nobody's fault. We've had a diet of this conditioning for our lives, and so let's shift it, but it's not anybody's fault. This is kind of the way that our overculture is. It's what we've experienced. When that happens, we are working with a tool set that is based largely on limitation and fears about what's going to happen based on what's happened in the past. So that's enough of that. What are we missing out on that we can actually open up access to when we become more fully embodied? So we start inviting, I mentioned it earlier, the whole council of selves rather than just the youngest part of the self. From an evolving human perspective, the neocortex, youngest part, and yet it's running the whole show. Let's do a little shifting around that. There are some centers of energy, centers of intelligence in the body that are a little bit older that we can also start to include. as we're making decisions in our life, as we're navigating in a breathwork session, as we're navigating our own situation in life at any moment, to be able to check in with, what does the intelligence of the heart say? What is this resource that we have access to in the heart space? Something we often work very, 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 very hard to find. Unconditional love. The wisdom and intelligence of unconditional love is in our body. And we can bring our awareness to that resource as needed. What else do we have going on in there that we might have access to if we were more fully embodied, if our breath was traveling through our body, and if our awareness, our consciousness was traveling through our body as we checked in as things are going on? Our gut. Our gut gives us a great deal of information about what we feel like moving towards and what we feel like moving away from. And then our mind can help us piece together why. But this is the first response. The body can help us guide, or, yes. And sometimes it will run counter to the mind. And we learn to hear the voices, though. We don't need to fix or solve anything, certainly not in the next 45 minutes. But we can acknowledge that the gut deserves a seat at the table as we're navigating decisions in our life, big and small. Big and small. Our instinct, living in the gut, our root, the energetic tether we have down to the earth that says you are not in charge of holding up the whole weight of everything all the time, but you are actually 100% of the time for your whole life supported by this bigger energy body called the earth. And that is an extraordinary center of wisdom and intelligence. So to be embodied, I use as a precursor to talking about movement. Because authentic movement is our expression of the energies that move within. And as is our breath. We're moving our breath. So here's something that comes up really often in breathwork. Resolved, connected part of their emotional process. When are they doing it right? Okay, let's be clear. This is how the mind will work. It will work that way sometimes. And when are they using expressive movement, but they're getting away from the place they don't want to go? I actually thought I described it kind of well on here. So we talked about, what we're talking about is the difference between exaggerated physical resistance that says, I'm not going there. I'm not going there to the place that's a little deeper, that's a little more still, to the place where the energy is that feels most dangerous or scary to me. That's getting away from some vulnerability and direct energetic processing where movement is happening and they are actually in contact with the energy that is ready to move. So, and then we will consider that the right way to do, right? They're resisting their process or they're really in their process. Right? So the mind is going to want to do that. And what we are responsible for as a facilitator is to recognize that, nope, gray area. Gray area. We do not make someone's moving away from their process wrong ever. We explore it and we ask it questions. We let it be happening. We know that we're in territory of our own growth when we start to get into a power dynamic with the person who is breathing. Because we think they should be doing something that they're not doing, or we think that they're doing something that we think they shouldn't. You get the idea. So, and then we want them to, oh, you're not, blah, you know. We know that's always 100% of the time an indication that we can shift, and bring attention to what's happening in a way that, as Lenny and Jayne have said, gives them their agency back. And chances are what develops from that will be something that we can also learn from. So how do we tell the difference in how we are supporting someone who's breathing? How can we tell the difference if we want to really encourage their movement, or if we want to in some way guide them back to surrendering to the energy in their body and to return to their breath. Well, they feel different, and the primary difference that we can sense is the aspect that the presence of control. So, because we're talking about embodiment and sensory things using language, I want to do a demonstration. The difference between moving the body and letting the breath move you can be sensed and seen. I'm moving my body. Okay, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, right? So what's going on in some way is that there's still a lot of activity going on up here, right? And that the body, the motion of the body looks a little disjointed. So there's a kind of an aspect of control that you can sense in that. So we don't make that wrong. Okay, this is what this person's doing, right? Great, what can I learn from that? But just to give a physical demonstration of what it can look like when somebody's being moved by their own emotional shift, breath, and process inside, it's a little bit more joined together. So we might start here with this movement. What am I doing? What am I going to do to integrate this? I'm going to start breathing. So we encourage them. Okay, where's your breath in that? Can you start breathing that? Okay, I'm doing this movement. I'm in control. Something's going on in my mind. I'm not quite fully in my body. But when I start breathing, you can see now we have the presence of dynamic movement where something is going on that exceeds control. So our own exploration as people in a body, and then also as breath workers, is that we can start to sense in ourselves when authentic movement is happening and when the movement or the situation of the body needs more breath, because that's what it boils down to. When do I need more breath to make a situation that feels hard or stressful or efforting on the physical part of my body? When can I give it more breath? So that's the thing that we go back to, especially when we are emphasizing movement, is that we go back to this guidance of, for ourselves and for others, the full and free breath, where we surrender to the energy in the body, which means we're not exerting a bunch of efforting or expressing, where we're letting go at some point in our process, which usually is going to be going on at the end. Yeah, I love this one. What do we do when we are unsure about a physical or otherwise intervention in a breathwork session? We go back into our own body and we breathe. So this doesn't take a lot of time. We're not coming away from our presence in this other person's process. But when we're unsure about, should I do this? Should I intervene? Should I not? Where did we go all of a sudden? Whoosh, right here. And so we're going to get limited feedback. We're going to get, our guidance that we get from our thoughts is going to be limited, and often it will guide us into some territory that is less helpful. So when that, not if, when that happens, I'm not sure what to do. Because as Jayne mentioned, we are going into the state of mystery where my commitment to you is that I will stay present and I will care and I will honor myself and I will honor you and that which wants to occur at this time. So when we get up in our head and we start trying to make a decision about, some of the things that could go on are like, well, if I haven't done anything in a while, am I really being a good breath worker? Or, I need to use some of those exercises that Jayne did with Andy, and it's this, when we start thinking, and then we kind of lose access to some of the guidance which is going to be most helpful in our body. What do we do when we don't know what to do? Stay present with them. Relax. Feel your presence. Re-enter your body. And I hope I will be saying this when I'm 85. We will never learn enough technical skill in breath work to not actively breathe and pray when we are practicing breath work.
True.
So that we are...
Can you repeat that one more time?
Yes. We will never learn enough skill and practical application in breath work to not actively be breathing and praying during a session. Praying, let me be open to guidance and support. Let me support what wants to move in this person. Let me honor what does not want to move in this person. Let me honor what needs to be honored in this person. And then what we're doing is not thinking about what's going on. We are feeling what's going on. And the chances that a rich and potent intervention can take place skyrockets, goes way up. The possibility that our relationship and our connection to them in that moment really helps them just shoots out the roof because we're not locked in our mind. So boiling this down to a simple point, when we don't know what to do and we've shot back up into our mind, we bring our attention, our awareness, and our breath back down into our body, and we pray to be of service. Or use a word that works for you, if not pray. And we stay with them. We don't go into our own process of cultivating presence within for our own feelings about what happened this morning. That's not what we're doing. But this is the what to do when you don't know what to do. It has to do with embodiment. It has to do with embodiment. Movement in breath work. So we laid this kind of out that there's this distinction between moving to get away from something or being moved by your breath. We have acknowledged that they look and feel a little bit different, and that we can start to discern what those differences are and support someone to bring their breath back into their process if we feel that they have gone up in their mind, and learn how to physically support them in expressing if they're being moved by their breath and something is occurring in their body that requires our support. So there are some logistical things related to that, which Jayne covered well. Be in your own body and feel that that's comfortable and good for you as you're supporting. You can encourage somebody to bring an emotional experience or movement in their body to a peak by normalizing that they're doing that. So you can give them verbal encouragement, or you can, would you mind standing up with me real quick? Or you can, let's just say Jayne is having a situation where she's moving and I feel a little reluctance. She's totally on the spot, by the way. Just a little bit of reluctance. So I could say, you're doing great. Keep moving. You're doing great. That's just great. You have full permission to move in your body, right? And but okay. Oh, yes. Okay, so this communicates permission way beyond. Yeah, thank you, Jayne. Yeah. So we can use our body to help. Yeah, this is okay to be happening. It's okay for you to do it. I'm doing it. It's okay for this, and it's okay if it wants to come to completion in a way that maybe you feel timid around. Mm-hmm. And I might do that with my voice. If I can feel that there's a sound, but doesn't have full permission, I can, I can make a little sound in the room too. And there's a difference between, thank you, Jayne. There's a difference between me getting a moment to express myself too and being of service, the energy of being of service. Because then after that we can go out dancing. But this aspect of movement and breath work, which is like you're moving, I'm moving, and if I feel that what's really going to support because they've peeked over and they have given permission, and now they're empowered. What do? I get still and I watch and I let them have that moment. They might not be aware that I'm doing anything at all. They're in their moment.
Mm-hmm.
But so when to be in motion with them to help, and when to be still, and when to encourage them to add their breath to what's going on. Okay, fuel that motion with the breath, bringing it back to the breath, and then letting what wants to happen to come to completion. So much of what we do is about letting things that went wrong and that are stored as a wrong pattern in the body, or a limiting pattern in the body, or nothing in the body. Maybe the occurrence, the belief, and what it's led to is that I'm not going to be in my body at all. Giving that permission to complete, giving those energetic patterns permission to complete. Just as with the resistance, getting to do that. Yes, getting resolution for some of those energetic. Yes, Julie.
Question about disembodiment. Do you see a difference between somebody who is out of their body or has left their body and somebody who you might describe as being in their mind or stuck in their mind? Like, if you're out of your body, are you necessarily then in your mind, or could you also be elsewhere?
And I think I understand your question, and then also to say that it's a varsity level question, and we could spend much more time on it than we have time for today. But yes, there are transcendent states where people are out of their body and they're also not in their mind. And in fact, a lot of spiritual traditions really emphasize transcendence and leaving the body. They leave the body behind altogether, and there is some aspect of transcendence in being fully out of the mind and the body that is beautiful. But then what happens, there are usually religious traditions that revere that, and they go a little too far, because they make the body wrong and bad. To my mind, that's not helpful. So we can have transcendent experiences in breathwork, absolutely, and we also want to come back into the body because we are here to live as well.
Can we have traumatized transcendent experience?
Yes. So one example of that is people having a Kundalini awakening and it's too much for them and they become very ill, and which is why we like to use nature as our teacher, because it includes the sun rising and setting and also the moon rising and setting, right? So the transcendent experiences, then we go back into and we integrate, just like the cycles. We don't leave the body out completely, because those experiences can be traumatizing and not a good match for being in this body, in this culture, in this life, in this time. So again, varsity question, and there's a lot to that, but those are just... Yes, Albert.
You know, in a lot of breathwork sessions I've witnessed, there's a point where the people seem like they're just gone, right? There's no movement whatsoever. They're almost not breathing, and I kind of think of it, they've gone to another planet. And I've experienced that in my own breathwork session. So my question is, I enjoy, going to the other planet during my own sessions, and so I tend to just let that happen, when they go off and disappear. But sometimes it can seem like a very long time. I'm just curious of your take on, intervening when you sense that something like that is happening.
Yes. There's so many experts in the room, but I'm going to jump in first because I have the talking stick, which is to say that there is no situation that happens twice. There's no one rule. There's no, this is what we do when this happens. But to check in with that person, okay, we can remind them to be moving their breath. And if we do that a few times and we are embodying it, so we're not tiptoeing around it like, oh, can you move? For you, I'm whispering. Would you like to? So we're not scared of interrupting them, right? So we're not scared because we're in our body and we're feeling in cohesion with them. So they can hear us when we say, how do you feel about moving some breath? Because we're here in a breathwork session to connect the breath. And if they don't respond, to something that they could hear and to a real invitation. If they continue to not respond and continue to not respond, well, okay, breathe next to them. Stay present in case something changes, but you might want to let them be there. I might remind people, I'll say the same thing in 4 different ways, but essentially that thing I will say is, come back into your body. Come back into your body. Yeah.
So your general recommendation is you do want them to continue with the breath work. That's what they're there for, not to zone out for 30 minutes of an hour session.
Well, you're going to have a lot more, that person is going to have a lot more information about what they're after. If you ask them how was their experience, what did they get out of it, if they're self-judging, like they wish they had stayed more present, then we know, this is how I can support that person. If that person says, actually what I really need is to go on Vipassana retreat, then they have that information. So we stay present to them. We don't want them to have, as Jim would say, a really expensive nap. We want to support them as their person who is helping them in transformational therapies. And transformational therapies, to my mind, is suggestive of something moving. At some point, not the whole time, because as we've said at the beginning, we're talking about something that's dynamic. So yeah, Albert, that's a really great question. And again, something that I really hope you all start talking to each other about and getting a little more experience with being in your body and trying things and seeing what works as somebody is going really quiet and kind of going off during a session. We are, to some degree, carrying around a lot of old patterns that do manifest very specifically in the body. We can look at the epigenetics and what we're learning about what is carried into this life from the cells of the DNA of our parents that has a relationship to our lineage that can live in our own body. The wisdom there, and also sometimes the trauma and tragedy there. So an example of this and how it relates to movement is that I was breathing, and at the time I was with Jack Fontana. And my arm was like creeping up on my body and kind of moving. And I didn't really know what was going on. And Jack put his hand on my arm just to acknowledge that, oh, there's something interesting that's going on here. And as I was breathing, and my awareness had been drawn to that place, and I felt permission to kind of explore it, move it, keep breathing, it dawned on me that my mother's disability has brought her arm up onto her body like that. And that the hardship and disconnect in that I'd experienced in the past with that relationship was showing up physically in my body. And that I could have a compassionate resolve of that in that moment. So when when their bodies start to move, that we become very interested makes us a good support person. We become very interested when something's going on and somebody's moving some part of their body, and we can bring our attention, our awareness, and our support, the appropriate kind of support, which will be an intuitive response to what's needed. That we also have agency to change if we start to express a support that, oh, once we get a little closer into that, it doesn't feel so right, let me shift. And we can come into and we can pull away. So the kind of intervention that involves movement, again, doesn't always involve touch. It can involve using your own body. It can involve pointing out, bringing some attention to the ways that they are moving their body, and that we have an ongoing physical conversation with that person, and we're in a role of support for that person's motion in their body. So I'm gonna say and then define a term that I like to use in breathwork facilitation, but also just anywhere, everywhere, all the time, on the plane, getting here, right now, which is naturalness in the body. So to be natural in the body means that, in this definition, we are not forcing stillness and we are not forcing movement. So naturalness in the body, it sounds wonderful, and it is. And it is. But let's pause for a moment to look at who we're supporting and why. They're coming to, somebody that we're working with is coming to breath work, chances are because they are not already fully present and alive in their body. And why they might not be present and fully alive in their body is because that actually in their life experience has not served them or really been a good thing. Maybe the energy of life is not something that everybody wants a whole lot more of right away. Andy's like, amen. So because of that, we respect incremental natural growth. Natural growth requires, if we think about watching our own plants grow, requires that we honor the time frame in which they are unfolding, and we put them in a position where they can receive the light, and we water them, and we take care of what we are able to take care of to optimize the potential for that energy force to be as brilliant as it can be. So you see where I've made a distinction here between something that I might do to enrich somebody's life and something that they are doing to enrich their life, which again, we arrive at this word, which can be interchangeable with embodiment, which is empowerment. To know is to love. There's a 1950s song that we'll sing at the lunchtime. So we're not forcing movement and we're not forcing stillness, but to be natural in your body. And sometimes language does help a great deal. So it's okay to move, which I probably do say sometimes, might not be as effective as allow your body to respond naturally to your breath. So that might be just some languaging around permission rather than, oh, I'm supposed to move now, or, oh, I'm supposed to be still now. So naturalness in the body is something that I hold as a very high value in this work and this work.
Kate?
Yes.
Can I just get you to maybe expound on something? You said naturalness in your body. Was that the phrase you used?
Yes.
So my question is, my first thought was naturalness in my body is being comfortable all the time. And then I started to wonder, is that true? Can I have naturalness in my body and still there be something maybe very uncomfortable, and I'm still natural in my body?
Yes. Thank you, Andy, who's just hit on a really significant topic. Again, you guys, your questions are too varsity. We don't have enough time. So, yes. And again, I will rely on the greatest teacher I have ever known, which is nature, my own, and the beauty of the natural world, which is stagnation doesn't always amount to this great thing. There needs to be some flow. Kind of weird things can build up and happen if stagnation is left to be going on for too long. So there's a difference between the comfort that we feel because we've shut down and we feel safe, and the aliveness that we feel when we are present in the body. So we might experience some comfort for a time when we are totally comfortable and not moving very much. But if we stay present, that will shift. There is a tough love and a deeply ingrained tough love energy belief that's pervasive in our culture, which is if I don't abuse myself, I'll never get anything done, and it's bullshit. Pardon my language. In our prisons, we know it to be true as we look at how we develop survival skills that are actually really have imprisoned us now as adults because of how we had to survive as children. Tough love, abusing ourselves into being productive and in motion and getting something done. The very least of which is that it's not effective. Okay, but it's greatly damaging as well. So we want to recondition a little bit of that. I have to force myself to get up and do something and move, and I have to be mean to myself in order to give myself the right incentive to get up and do something. actually we thrive. It might take its own route and it might take a little bit longer. But if we will thrive in an atmosphere of presence and love. That's where we will thrive. Is that anywhere near your question?
Yes, and I understand it's a big question that may not have an answer in this moment. Branching back to your whole concept of not knowing and being okay with that.
Yes. Thank you for that, Andy. There's a couple things I'm going to touch on in our remaining just few minutes. Music can be an extraordinary other facilitator, being selective about being, gathering music that you feel that you really love, being open to not playing that music, but having it on hand music, whether it's drumming that you do, making your own sounds in cohesion with somebody's process, so not taking over, but using music and taking, if you plan to use music, to really explore the sounds that are out there and the things that you like and put it together and use that as a helpful tool. We talked a little bit about exaggerated movement and resistance helping to get things moving. Again, would fall under the category of movement, is where if something is not moving, how can we help it to move without setting off a bomb in the dam, right? But we work in cohesion with what's going on for that person in their body. I'm going to close with the most significant piece. I've said this about 3 or 4 other things, but this really is the most significant piece, which is, as a practitioner, your relationship to your own growth, your own vulnerability edge, and your contact with your own deeper self within your body has to be a significant relationship in your life. Significant relationship in your life. So we might be funneled off in the direction of, well, now I'm an expert because I have the level thing that, so now I'm in a position of service and I help other people. And if we leave ourselves out of the loop of presence and care, we will become not only very limited in our ability to support people, but we actually could kind of, if our own ego gets involved and we're not active in our own process, some unhealthy things might start to develop between you and your clients, between you and your familials or whatever. So that you have a relationship to source directly. I mean, God, this is what we are really talking about when we get most on fire about doing the work that we do. It's because, oh, wow, we have contact with source in us. And it isn't just in us. It is us. And it isn't just insular in a vacuum in the singular body that we know to be autonomous and ultimately alone, right? We're getting away from that model. But in this molecular way, the air that I breathe in, the molecules of them being imprinted, as Jim talks about so beautifully, being imprinted with my own essence and traveling back out into the world, far beyond Letty. Letty gets a few, and then far beyond that. So that when we are practicing alignment, breath, vulnerability, and having a relationship to source, which is, we'll call it our breath moving in our own body, sincerely, we will become extraordinary support people for those who are around us, or those who come to us for the guidance and support that we can provide. So this is a beautiful example of dynamicness, which is that, yes, our own relationship to source, and that be a primary relationship in our life, is significant. And also we absolutely need to have an ecosystem of life around us for mirroring, for connection, for support, for working with some of this or that happened in my session. Who am I going to call and talk to about that? That we live, work, grow, and develop as a field, as a community, is just as significant. Our relational healing is so significant to creating a strength and magnetism in this field so that it can be available to people who are holding their breath. Oh, so that this can be available. They'll see it. Oh, this or that. It'll be represented in the world so that it will be available to people who are holding their breath. This is kind of what we want to have happen. And the way that that happens is when this tide lifts all boats, right? So that we create a mature and alive and a dynamic, again, healthy field of breath work that will make waves. And we cannot tell how far those waves will go and how many people they will touch, but we know they've touched us. And so that's kind of part of why we're all here. That's why we're not leaving the body behind. And we will have plenty of opportunities to take the exercises that Jayne has talked about and some of the concepts that I've talked about into the body with each other in our next segment.